Greetings. This video is part of a series on testing vector level fills. Each scenario will demonstrate a fill problem and provide some troubleshooting tips. Tools which will be used are the gap check view, found under the View menu, Vector Inspector, a new tool that's being developed, not yet added to Tahoma 2D, but it will shortly, and the Select tool, and the Fill tool, and the Control Point tool. Scenario 1. What is going to be shown is that an auto-closed shape remains active when ungrouped. Steps. Start with an image with 3 ungrouped, unclosed shapes. We can see here there are 3 shapes. Each one is in a different color to make it easier to see. Over on the Vector Inspector, you can see that they are ungrouped because the group ID is what we call a ghost ID. A negative number in that column indicates an ungrouped group identifier, a ghost group. Select one of the shapes, and we're going to make a gap that is narrow enough for autofill to work. So with the gap check viewer enabled, you'll see a very thin magenta line going between the 2 ends of this shape. That means that the gap is too wide to be fillable. To adjust that, we're going to use the Control Point tool. Choose one end of the stroke, move it towards the other until that thin magenta line disappears. Now it disappeared, so it is now narrow enough that an autofill will work on that shape. We then change over to the Fill tool, choose a shape, again using a different color so it's easier to see, and click to fill that shape. Back to the Select tool. Now we're going to move this shape, still ungrouped. We're going to move it over the other shapes and watch what happens. Let's get it a little closer toward the end of some of these shapes. Seems pretty good so far, but you'll watch at some point where it hits just the right conditions. Here it's even starting to break up a little bit. The fill, a couple of things to notice. Well, the fill is not overlapping either of those 2 shapes, yet you can see that this shape is supposed to be the top level shape. The order of the strokes has the highest numbered stroke being the top of the stack. So you'll see the line does overlay the red line, overlays the green line, but the fill seems to be behind those lines. So that already is a problem. But now we see another problem. We see this empty section down here where as we move the shape around, it kind of sticks to other shapes on the image. And there, it's left a little bit of yellow behind that shouldn't necessarily be there. And you'll see it just gives odd results. It seems to pick up some of these other auto-close lines along the way. I've even had it fail at some times where it will actually fill in beyond the shape that it originally started at, and then it will leave that fill behind. I can move away. Well, there it just did it. It fills up the entire shape that looks like a D, and if I move away from that now, you see it leaves that fill behind. So those are unacceptable outcomes from what should have been just a simple filled shape, moving it around a little bit. The shape fill remains active and it spills out and it goes into other unclosed, ungrouped shapes. Now press undo until I get back to that condition just prior to putting in the fill on this shape. It's going through all those steps backward now. Okay, now I'm back at the beginning where I've created a shape narrow enough to autofill, but I'm going to make one change. I'm going to group it. I grouped that shape on itself. You can see over in the vector inspector, it has now created a group number 2. So we have these original lines, the red and the green line, are still in the original ghost group, but this magenta stroke is now in a group ID of 2. Now I'm going to switch to the fill tool, pick that yellow color, fill it. Now let's see what the results are as I move across those ungrouped shapes. Already, a good thing that's happening is the fill is showing up appropriately. It's showing up at the top of the stacking order, so it's covering the lines below it. And you'll notice it's not trying to fill beyond the boundaries of the original fill shape. It's not trying to go into the spaces, the gaps in these other shapes. So we've achieved stability of the fill by doing this. So that concludes this demonstration. Again, what we were showing here is that an auto-closed shape will remain active when it's ungrouped. Simply by grouping it, this autofill shape now picks up stability and it can be easily moved around and maintain its integrity. Thank you, and look forward to some additional scenarios as we explore vector fill issues and some tips on how to resolve them.